Do you have a key mic? Yes. Are you Alexander too? Yes. Awesome. I'm Rebecca. It's great to see you. So, there we go. Looks good. Video. Cool. So, okay. Yeah. The sound. What is it?
Yeah,
music
it's
or
like
we could before you get started, we can connect you up to the speaker just over Bluetooth. Clicker we don't have. Sorry.
How many presentations are there going to be?
Two.
Yeah.
Clicker we don't have, but what we can do, and it depends on how you guys want to present.
yeah, I think we will
You do it yourselves. Okay. And what we could do is just get you guys connected to the.
No.
No?
No.
Doesn't matter? Okay.
The
Cool.
sound
It's just like accompanying.
is background. Yes.
Alright, cool. So then we're good to go. Sound and video check is good. Did you guys already get a beer?
No.
I think that's the next step. Just outside in the cooler. Alright, good.
No one has a link for us.
We did have Mikhail posted on the Meetup, Twitter, and Noch nicht.
Oh.
Aber das ist super dick. Ja. Das Glas mir das gar nicht flustert. Only different. Das wäre einfach so angrily. Jamie, are you someplace that you get a connection, Wi-Fi connection? You got an invite. You just should. There should be a way to accept the invite. You're seeing where I wrote, hey Jamie, Beck Johnson, Datarella. Tracy gave me your Skype ID. That you got, right? Yeah, it's a bit loud in here because of the crowd. Are you you're logged into Skype, right? Okay, yeah. Sorry for the miscommunication there. Yeah, you should have. I'll go ahead and resend here. Okay. It's my account. My name is Rebecca, and the account, you can also search for me if that's faster. The account would be LJACTS. Yeah, exactly. Got me? Now we're good. Okay, you're active, we're connected. That's awesome. I'm just going to go ahead and start a video chat. Good. Got Jamie. Here. You can't see me yet, but that's normal. So we're just going to check now to see if I can get you on our big screen. I'm going to go ahead and connect the HDMI. Absolutely. Do you want to do that before or after I do the video check? quick 1 minute with Michael. Let me just go give him my phone, okay? Because you're already connected with me. Just a moment. There you go.
Hi.
You're all right.
Yeah, actually, I like the room much better. So the shape of the room is much nicer. Actually, not that much dark. It's just below. I mean, even less. Yeah, I'll.
Less air than already.
So, how was your day?
Very good.
My day is outside. Want to join me? I will organize you. We have a seat ready. We need service.
Jamie?
Yeah, and
Bring one back there.
Well, I'm sure that
Das kann ich auch erst machen. Wie du willst, was dir lieber wäre.
Also es gibt noch ein paar Stühle. Also wir könnten noch einen Wagen Stühle bringen. Ja,
Kann ich machen.
Ja, aber alle haben fast alle haben noch, oder? Ich meine,
ja.
Jamie, you can hear me, yes? You can give me a thumbs up? Okay.
Ganz kurz, ne? Ganz kurz. Nur Vorstellung. Da ist noch ein Stuhl frei. Noch einer? Ist der noch frei? Ja. We have 2 free seats here. If you want. There's 1 free. And here are 2. 2 more free seats. And 2 more free seats. Okay. Hello, everybody. That's a full house, I would say. For the first time, we are in this room, room number 4. We usually are in the slightly bigger but a lot darker room 5. So I personally I like this room more. It will get very warm because there's no AC in here. But that's because of our really hot topics, of course. May I first give the word to Florian Buschke? Sorry. To Sven Buschke and his colleague from Deloitte, because Deloitte is the owner, or at least the owner, like the owner of this tenant of this location. And they are so nice that they let us do our meetups here, and they even sponsor the beer. So if you like the beer, please give a very warm welcome to those guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think I lost count how many times we did this.
Together here?
Is it a 2-digit number already?
No, I think it's 8.
Okay. Yeah, we are always happy to host this and also provide you with beer. We hope it's the beer is cool enough. I think it's always worthwhile to give a quick intro. Deloitte is actually engaging in blockchain because you might think we are a big 4 company, which is true. We still do audit, but we not only do audit, we are heavily investing in blockchain, and we have globally over 1,000 practitioners dealing with blockchain, covering all businesses that we usually cover, from audit to consulting, financial advisory, risk advisory, tax and legal. And this as one approach, we think blockchain is a good candidate where this really comes to fruition, as many aspects of blockchain also involve regulatory boundaries. If you look at ICOs, that's where we currently dealing also in talks with the BaFin. But to give you a quick overview of some of the current initiatives that we do, I hand over to my colleague Chan. And enjoy the evening.
Okay, also welcome from my side. My name is John, and I'm from Deloitte Consulting and supporting through the Blockchain Institute. I'm actually focused on technology strategy, and I'm supporting Sven in all the different blockchain topics. And actually, I found that in the last month, we got some, we had a lot of contact with energy companies or companies that are related to building infrastructure for the energy industry. So that might be physical infrastructure and power plants. And actually, in that sense, blockchain is also moving in that direction, especially in the connection with IoT. And I think today's topic is sort of the convergence, as we call it now, between different technologies. And IoT is obviously a major thing already, and blockchain is sort of catching up. And now we combine that to support energy companies. So I don't know if there are some people here who are interested in that. I'm happy to catch up with you, talk about this, and hear your opinion. Have a nice.
Okay, since our keynote speaker Jamie is already on air, you see him right there, and he's waiting for us to invite him to start talking. I will have my introductions talk very, very short. So today is our birthday. This Meetup's birthday, second birthday. So I would say this is an applause. We have, at least this was the number of this morning, we have 1,695 members in the group. We meet 6 times a year, so every 8 weeks or so. And we have, this is quite crowded, so we have between 70 and 250 participants per meetup. Depends on the topic, depends on the day, depends on the Champions League match, whether the result is clear in advance or not. And you see some of our topics we have had in the past. And you see that we not only talk about technology aspects of blockchain, but we talk about legal aspects, we talk about business aspects, and we talk about such strange things as ICOs and stuff like that. And that is what I'm allowed to do. So, by the way, my name is Michael. I'm founder and CEO of Datorella, and that is Datorella, GmbH. We are a Munich-based company, and I'm allowed to do a little bit of shameless self-marketing here because we pay for the pizza. That is us. We founded our company in 2013. We are privately held. We are owner-managed, so everything in the family. And we have our development team in Poland, in Gdansk, that is Baltic Data Science. And we partner with Deloitte. You can possibly read this one. That is Parity Technologies. You might know the company. Parity is famous for its Ethereum browser and for $180 million lost in oblivion. And then we have Outlier Ventures, whose founder and CEO is still waiting for his first act. And then we have another company based in Stuttgart, Sweden, MM1 Consulting. We do some IoT stuff with them. What we do is, or what we are possibly best known for is our project we have done and we are still doing in Jordan, the refugee camp. We implemented a payment and accounting system for the United Nations. It was 1 year ago in May 2017 that went live in 1st May. And it is running flawlessly. It is running without any problem. And we have roughly 500,000 users of the system. It's a blockchain-based payment and accounting system with 500,000 users. It's running, it's live in the wild. And please do a Google search if you find another example. Yeah. Then we have 3 different own projects. That is CodeLegit. We, together with Marcus Kaulas of CMS, that's a law firm, we have been digging somewhat into the technical compliance space. So we asked ourselves, can companies use smart contracts now as they are now? Or is there a legal problem, perhaps? And as it is, there is a huge legal problem because smart contracts are neither smart nor contracts, and they are not compliant if you use them as they are in their naked form. Then we have another project, and it will be a product. This is called RAI, that is based on our experiences we have had with our Jordan refugee camp project. We use those, we take those experiences and have built a payment and accounting banking solution, which we are just offering to different companies in very different markets, And last but not least, we have CrowdStartCoin. And we will launch a very interesting thing, that is the CrowdStartCoin app. That is an app that you can pay for specific, or pay for things you can get at the Dahom Tech Conference. If you don't have applied, if you're a developer, and if you haven't applied to the Dahom Tech Conference at July 24th, you should do that. That is the biggest tech conference, and it will be a lot of fun. And we will offer our CrowdStartCoin app, with which you can buy things there. And if you have our own homemade coin, the CrowdStartCoin, you can propose and vote on blockchain projects which are eligible to, again, get CrowdStartCoins. So our aim is to establish the CrowdStartCoin as the method of the currency for the blockchain ecosystem. So every good and valid and valuable blockchain project that deserves to get CrowdStartCoins should get CrowdStartCoins. At the moment, we decide who gets CrowdStartCoins, and we will develop this program that the community will decide who gets CrowdStartCoins. So that is a liquid democracy thing. You, all of you, and that's a global thing, we can decide who will get CrowdStartCoins in the future. To be launched at the Dahom conference at July 24. And again, we are looking for new team members, technical blockchain consultants in Munich and in Poland, Gdansk. If you're interested, please speak to one of our team. Our team members are right here. That's Jörg, and that's Yuki Taka, and that's Jonathan, and that's Rebecca. Martin. And Martin. Martin, where are you? Martin, sorry. Martin is the newest team member. Yeah. And Kira is missing. She has to take care of the kids. Tonight's program. First, we will have one of my favorite speakers, or the favorite speaker, I have to say. It's Jamie Burke, founder and CEO of Outlier Ventures. You may have heard of this company. They are very, very, very cool because they are very early and they have already invested in companies most people haven't even heard of. Let's hope that people will hear. And after that talk, so he will give a talk. He's in Great Britain right now, and you may ask questions afterwards. So you can ask questions to Jamie. And then we have two Alexanders, Alexander Kapitonov and Alexander Klopenkin. I hope I found a good manner to they're over there. Hi, Alexandros. And they are from IRA Lab, and they will present us a very, very, very cool thing. They will talk about autonomous machines where AI and blockchain converge. And I mean, I don't know whether there's some pizza left. You can, every time, look into the room and get yourself some pizza or beer. We won't have a pause. We won't have a break here, but we can have more beer and pizza afterwards. So, no, that was it. I would say, no, that was not it. The next meetup, this blockchain, Munich blockchain, next meetup will be on 19 June, and it will be a totally different topic. It will be Crypto Exchanges 2.0, Secure Cryptocurrency Trading. And that is very much about compliance. Because, I mean, there are hundreds of crypto exchanges right now. There are even companies based in Munich providing or offering white label crypto exchanges. But most of them aren't compliant. And what is to be done to offer a compliant exchange? And we want to find out. And we will have at least 2 crypto exchanges which are not existent right now, but will be of existence then, that present themselves. So that was it. And now I would hand over to Rebecca and Jamie. And Jamie, sorry that it took me so long, but I need to do it. Okay, thank you very much. Have fun.
Hey there, everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, so thanks for inviting me, albeit virtually. I think the last event I was at with you guys, you mentioned token in the headline, and the room filled with about 500 people, and it was only supposed to seat about 75. So it looks like you've still got a pretty good crowd there, even though you haven't explicitly mentioned tokens. So well done, guys. So I guess the reason why Michael wanted me to open this evening is because about 18 months ago, Outlier Ventures wrote a white paper called Convergence. And this was really a product of what at that point was about 3 years of investing in the blockchain space. So Outlier Ventures has now been going for over 4 years. Technically, we were the first dedicated blockchain investment fund. And because we're not a GPLP fund, we're an LLP partnership with 70 partners. So we deploy our own capital. That's meant that we've been able to navigate the landscape and quickly move into this crazy world of crypto assets, away from equity and into crypto assets, where a lot of traditional funds just couldn't get the sign off from their LP. So we were then technically the first fund to dedicate towards crypto assets and tokens. So what led us to write the Convergence white paper was over what was then 2.5 years of investment experience in blockchain. We'd probably spoken to about 1,200 startups, from Japan to Toronto to Berlin, Kenya, you name it, across a myriad of different use cases. And we kind of became convinced, this was before, I guess, the start of last year, where tokens, it became obvious to everybody that tokens were potentially the killer app of blockchains. And so there was this kind of unease of investing in a decentralized landscape, decentralized web architecture, and people trying to build proprietary business models for infrastructure and charge rent, basically, for you to use it. But everyone was kind of, ignoring the fact and I guess hoping somebody would figure it out. Unfortunately, the market did figure it out. And the business model of tokenization appeared and became mainstream year. so during that time, we were kind of looking at a lot of the infrastructure that people were building, and it really just didn't make sense that people were trying to build proprietary infrastructure for a decentralized web. I think everybody was very convinced that what the blockchain stack represented, distributed ledger technology, digitally scarce assets, smart contracts, was a new web infrastructure, and that web infrastructure would be decentralized, it would be more peer-to-peer, and potentially more automated. And most interesting and I guess relevant for this was peer-to-peer for people, but also machine, and then potentially what referred to as agent to agent, so bot to bot, and then this kind of concept of an autonomous economic agent. So these economic agents that were entirely or partially autonomous and could live and breathe on these ledgers and kind of full markets bottom up. But obviously the kind of technology that we were looking at was very far removed from that, and to a degree still is today. But the point is that everybody was trying to take VC money to build an infrastructure that would be open source or partially open or derived from open source, and therefore very likely to be very low barriers to entry to come in and copy them and effectively just do it cheaper. So we were convinced there would be this race to zero, where it was close to cost, close to free to use this infrastructure. So ultimately, there was no business model in building out proprietary-based infrastructure for the decentralized web. And so tokenization is the business model. Owning a chunk of tokens, the unit of value in these systems would be how you would be remunerated. As the utility of the network grew, the usage grew, your holdings would grow, and that meant you could be open source, and you could effectively allow for people to use that system for free. So for us, we started to see a few startups that were coming from the AI world who were starting to look at this infrastructure and say, well, this infrastructure could potentially solve a number of problems that we have, enabling us to scale. The primary one was to be open source and to kind of gain the network effects from that. Because obviously platform monopolies have data monopolies lead to AI monopolies. And so we're becoming increasingly reliant upon a number of AI companies for every walk of life, from health to logistics and e-commerce, media, and the decentralized AI or decentralized AI systems offered a good counterbalance to that would be more equitable and enabled for these communities to amass an equivalent amount of data from this kind of long tail of users that could allow them to compete. And so we started to see a few companies that we define as blockchain plus. So they were looking at blockchain infrastructure, DLT infrastructure, but they were looking to combine that with AI machine learning, so blockchain plus AI. And so this really got us thinking, where's the business model? Where's the real commercial opportunity within distributed ledger technology? Well, actually, it was not the ledger itself, which is inherently dumb, should be open, should be close to the point of free, but it was the intelligence on top of the ledger that could move things around, could make markets form in an intelligent way. And actually, that was the opportunity to develop proprietary commercial advantage and effectively a decentralized web architecture. So that was kind of the birth of the blockchain plus thing. And then we started to work that through and think, well, could that be true for a number of other deep technologies, not just AI? And the more we spoke to people in, say, 3D printing, AR, VR, autonomous robotics, we started to see that resonated with these guys too. So, I really like the 3D printing use case. So 3D printing, people are still printing Ewoks. They're not printing anything of value because, firstly, if you have a CAD file, a design file, and you put it anywhere near the internet, it can be copied innumerable times. And then if it can be printed innumerable times, you're totally screwed, right? There's just no control of IP and copywriting. So the promise of something like distributed ledger technology with smart contracts of digitally scarce tokens means that a CAD file could be a unique digital asset that couldn't be copied. A printer could be a wallet, and for the printer to transact, to effectively produce a physical copy of that CAD file, it would have to do so on a ledger which is auditable. And then any payments to do with rights management could be governed by smart contracts. And so all of a sudden you have an infrastructure that can enable the 3D printing supply chain to scale. And that just hasn't existed before. And this isn't startups, just startups looking at this. Airbus, for example, out of Hamburg, are already looking at how they can use this kind of technology to do edge production for spare parts in their supply chain. So, and the kind of list goes on and on. You know, if you want to have autonomous marketplaces for drones, which is, you know, practically every combination of buzzword you can think of, because it's drones, it's IoT devices, it's blockchains, and potentially an AI to kind of govern these systems. That would have to be a decentralized web architecture, both from a security perspective. You know, you've got lumps of people flying around in the sky, so you definitely don't want to have a single point of failure or attack. And then equally, you know, what's the alternative? Are we literally going to allow Amazon to have the logistics AI for every mode of transportation? Not going to happen. You know, these kind of use cases are a means. You look at the combination of tokens, distributed ledger technology. The way that I kind of look at the stuff is it allows for the mass coordination of systems. It provides an incentive for participants to form digital economies that are decentralized, that are not centralized into the hands of a few monopolies, removing intermediaries, allowing for high degrees of automation and potentially autonomy. So this was the area, this was kind of how we wrote out the white paper. Since that point 18 months ago, maybe longer now, maybe 2 years, we've been actively investing against that thesis. That's led us to be the lead investor on IOTA, which some of you may know, which is based out of Berlin, which is looking at, they call it tangles. It's not a blockchain, it's a DAG, distributed acyclical graph, which is kind of next generation thinking, non-linear ledgers. And that's specifically to solve IoT, and in particular industrial IoT. So how can you secure IoT devices, that economy and those supply chains? So that was our first kind of convergence tokenized play. And that went, I think, to top 5 crypto. It's around about number 10 now. But it's getting huge traction by a number of corporates, including Bosch, Volkswagen. And I kind of come to this a little bit later. I'm not saying this to flatter. Germany really is literally, I'd say, the heartland of convergence, not just in Europe, but globally, with a huge amount of corporate adoption and interest. So, as you may already know, Bosch actually publicly invested in IOTA tokens as a strategic investment, because they believe this effectively could become almost a digital commodity in their supply chain. It's a fundamental layer in the Web3 stack. And actually, they're looking at a number of pre-sale investments even now with us in Convergence. And they're just one of a number. So Deutsche Telekom, Siemens, Airbus are all very actively looking at the space alongside their own internal blockchain innovations. So, so on the one hand, this kind of convergence thesis, we believe is the natural conclusion of where distributed ledger breaks out of just being blockchain for blockchain's sake, or just narrow confines of financial markets, capital markets, to effectively becoming the backbone and infrastructure for the web. And that's both the machine-to-machine economy, as well as all the things that as meat objects like to do as well. So So we're starting to see that kind of manifest now, and we've made several investments, some of which are about to bring tokens to market. So we were a lead investor on Ocean. Ocean is looking at using tokenized distributed ledger technology to allow people to unlock big data lakes that are currently siloed to algorithms. So to allow the matching of algorithms to data sets, and for the people that own that data to be remunerated by the value that the algorithms can create from it. Super fascinating project led by a guy called Trent Wannicky, who's again Canadian, out of Berlin, and actually originated from an AI background. He sold a company to Google in AI before we moved into the blockchain space. Similarly, we have a project that we just announced in Zurich called Fetch, which is some early DeepMind, some of the early DeepMind team. Actually, the CEO was the first investor in DeepMind. Like most of the DeepMind guys, they come from a gaming background, so massively multiplayer online gaming environments where they create synthetic agents to organize, to form these kind of living, breathing, biological gaming environments, forming markets, and they've kind of taken that, built out an entirely new ledger, which will be the world's first intelligent ledger. So in theory, it doesn't need smart contracts. The intelligence is embedded in the ledger learns, it self-optimizes, and allows for autonomous economic agents. So that agent can be entirely synthetic, so it just lives on the ledger and represents a person, for example, or a group of people, or it could be associated to a physical object. And so, for example, it could be a shipping container. The AEA knows the shipping container is half full. It will go out and fill that capacity itself without any people in an open market. A vehicle could have an AEA, an autonomous vehicle could have an AEA that negotiates with roads, toll roads. So every road could effectively become a toll road that has its own AEA. And these kind of roads can negotiate with cars to ease traffic congestion. So it can say you pay less per mile if you take this route rather than a more congested route. So, you know, we're moving into on one an exciting and slightly scary world where we're seeing this fusion of technologies. And what's most exciting is, you know, so currently we're looking at distributed ledger technologies and blockchains being applied to scale an individual technology, let's say IoT or AI. But increasingly, as these separate, disparate deep technologies begin to have a common operating system, or at least operating systems that share certain characteristics that would be tokenized, that would be open sourced, that would be on a variety of different ledgers. And there's degrees of interoperability, we're going to start seeing the convergence of these technologies into single use cases. So as I mentioned, you know, drones plus IoT devices. So drones as IoT devices collecting data governed by autonomous economic agents on a ledger. You know, these are use cases that are already being rolled out. So it's a hugely exciting space, and I think it offers both entirely new opportunities, but then it also offers the opportunity to have an alternative web to what the FANGs are offering. You know, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, and then the BATs, the Asian equivalents, who are making these kind of AI advantages, which regulators try to combat from a top-down perspective, but actually these new tokenized technologies offer to combat from a bottom-up perspective. And so I think the combination of these two things makes for an exciting return to the original promise and premise of Tim Berners-Lee's vision for a web commons, one that was more equitable, more distributed. And so I was at the EU Parliament, I think with the startup that's presenting later, just last week. Was it this week? No, it was Monday. Right? So this week. And I was saying just this to a number of MEPs that, you know, Europe has a really big advantage, not only because a lot of the industrialists in the Industry 4.0 scene as a rich ecosystem which already has high degrees of collaboration, which is required for these decentralized marketplaces, which you just don't see anywhere else in the world. But actually, because it's in the interests of Europe to encourage these new emergent ecosystems, which is effectively a form of tokenization, is kind of crowdfunding 2.0 for open source web protocols. This means that the end users are the investors, and therefore their interests are aligned, which is the opposite of what happens at Facebook, right? You have your shareholders and their interest, which is extraction and exploitation of users, and then you have the users on the other side. So the opportunity here is we can align citizens with investors and owners of these protocols, and I think it's going to for the promise of a better web, a more ethical web, a more equitable web, and hopefully one that's more secure. So that's kind of Convergence. We've actually just released, well, tomorrow I think formally release the Convergence 2.0 white paper, which is the evolution of what's come from tracking this space over the last just under 2 years. We also have a number of trackers, live trackers of every startup that's a Convergent startup by category, technology, and geography. We also have that across both tokens and equity, so it's freely available to find out on the website. And really what we're looking to try to do is build a community around the Convergence Thesis, and Datarella have been good friends of ours and champions of the Convergence Thesis, and looking to realize that in their own way. Convergence is incredibly complex. It has many different technologies and increasing degrees of complexity if you're going deep into cryptography, or you're going deep into machine learning, or neural nets, or industrial IoT and hardware. So it really requires a community approach to help inform, learn, and inspire, and more importantly, finance this infrastructure. So I invite you all to read the white paper. Go to outlierventures.io. You'll find the white paper. You'll find it there live now, but tomorrow, hopefully, you won't be able to avoid it. We're going to be doing a bit more of a marketing push. And we'll have a number of Slack channels with a number of academic institutions, whereby we're working with technical universities to kind of develop this further. So again, I kind of welcome you to participate there. And equally, we have a number of projects coming to market. I'm not going to promote any of them because that would be naughty. But if you follow us, you follow our projects, and I'm sure if you're interested in Convergence, you'll be interested in them. So that's kind of it really on Convergence, and equally happy to talk more broadly about either that or the market in general. Obviously, the market's seen a lot of red over the last few months. I actually don't think that's a bad thing. So happy to kind of talk through that. Equally, regulatory stuff. So we spend a lot of time, spending far too many times speaking with lawyers and regulators about crypto assets, whether they'll be regulated or not, and by a number of different geographies. So happy to speak to that too. So feel free to ask questions if you have them. Otherwise, have a good evening.
Jamie, thank you so much for your talk. I mean, have you heard anyone before describing the convergence of all of those hot technologies in 20 minutes? I haven't. So that is, he does that, and he does it out of the blue. So he sits there, he doesn't have a presentation or so, because he doesn't need it. So thank you very much, Jamie. And to you, do you have questions to Jamie? There's one? No, that wasn't a question. It was like an auction.
I can start with a question. The interesting question for me is how you would see the trajectory in terms of the algorithmic side of it. So the data side, having that distributed, I mean, makes total sense. And thinking of the algorithms in traditional AI, that so far is still focusing on in-memory computation, on everything centralized. So thinking of the startups that you are visiting, how is your take on the future, like maybe the next 2 or 3 years in terms of distributed computation of the AI? That's really something that personally interests me.
Yeah, so I'll try and answer it the best I can. So it's important to stress that, you know, there's only so far I can go technically.
Well, sure.
I have a team of far more intelligent people who, you know, specialize within each kind of technology substrate and what have you. But I think it's a really interesting point in that, you know, if you think about where there's kind of two cycles. On the one hand, you've got to look where we are with current distributed ledger technology blockchains, and they struggle to scale even for the most simple of things, let alone to handle, you know, the levels of computation, for example, that an AI would demand of it. And actually, a bit of a shameless plug, but this is the interesting thing about Fetch, is that they built a ledger. Actually, it's a combination of a DAG and a blockchain, and they've managed to get it to do, just on a testnet, 40,000 transactions per second, and they reckon it could do several million, because they started from the premise of this ledger must support the levels of computation that AEAs would require, and millions, potentially billions of AEAs, which is very different from the starting point of, say, Ethereum or Bitcoin. So I think we're starting to see, we're moving away from general purpose ledgers to ledgers designed, you know, there's always these trade-offs, right? You can either have cost, security, or speed. You can't have all three. This is, you know, very crude. So, you know, how do you prioritize what trade-offs you make for your specific problem or challenge? And that's why I think what's interesting, and we break this down in the white paper, you have the Web3 technology stack. There are multiple layers. And they start at kind of data collection. They go through to what we call, you have curation. You then have a transportation. So how do you package up data and get it to the right algorithm or the right person in order that they can make decisions, all the way up to AAs. And there are some fundamental layers that we need to have there in order that we can come close to business use cases. So I think blockchain generally, and then especially when you're looking at convergent. Focusing on the key protocol layers that are going to be enabling this stack. And we're probably 3 to 5 years away from people being able to build dApps on top of these that apply this technology to a particular business. Sadly, that doesn't stop, you know, I don't know, 1,000 tokens out there at the moment for, you know, app tokens effectively built upon something like Ethereum. And I'm not bashing Ethereum, but, you know, at this stage, most of those use cases are just not viable. Economically, they're not viable, just by the economic design of Ethereum. So I think there's some other interesting things. So I'm looking at a AR company at the moment, and so they're a conventional AR company, already worth several million. They have, I think, 3-4 million consumers using it in a centralized way. They have 700 retailers, and they're looking to kind of create retail experiences around AR. Now, one of the really interesting things that we're talking to them is saying, well, look, potentially a physical retail store could become a node, and it could, not only is it a place where you experience AR, but it could also form a mesh network to allow the computation for somebody to walk down the street and have a seamless AR experience, not just inside that store, but as they walk down the street on billboards or what have you. So effectively, you can plug into physical infrastructure to allow for distributed compute systems, whereby people who contribute compute power to enable the streaming of AR experiences earn tokens. and that's subsidized by advertising. And so, if you think about how you would achieve that without tokenization, it's almost impossible. And so this is the really exciting thing about tokenization is you can begin to, and this is what we do, we don't just invest, we're also an advisor. So we have a head of crypto economics out of Toronto. He works with a team of quants. Half the time I don't understand what the hell they're talking about, but that's okay. I think he does. And they work in Imperial College. Imperial College is economics department and computer science department, as well as Cambridge University. And they basically they map out an ecosystem to say, okay, this is a digital economy. What do we need? What resources do we need contributed to the network for it to scale? How do we incentivize these stakeholders? How do we disincentivize certain behaviors? And effectively, you map out how you would scale a digital economy. And so, for example, the way that Ocean are handling this, they built a digital economy whereby they're incentivizing people to commit compute power, algorithms, the training of algorithms, both in terms of data, the availability of data. And so you have a number of kind of actions and behaviors, and this token, and sometimes you can have multiple tokens, will be the incentive, and both currency, the commodity, and this kind of incentive mechanism to have this mass coordination of resource. But you're right, compute power is going to be a critical point. And circling back to the AR example, one of the neat things is they've got so some of the use cases that they're working on is these kind of games whereby people are incentivized to physically go into stores, right, and have an AR experience, and they get discounts or whatever. But interestingly, what they're also exploring is potentially the end users, the consumers that are solving puzzles or performing actions, could potentially form a human consensus mechanism. So they literally do a proof of work. And in doing so, by playing games on their mobile phones, they are securing the network by proof of work. So there's just so many variables. If you think about the opportunity here, this is the greatest experiment in socioeconomics we've ever had. If you're an economist, this is like a wet dream. You can birth digital economies, you can tweak them, you can refine them, you can see how they perform real time. And if they don't work, you can fork them. And so, on a bit of a ramp up here, this is the most exciting thing for me, is that these things are actually quite evolutionary, biological in nature. So what I like as an investor when I'm looking at investing in crypto assets is they're inherently less fragile than an equity investment. An equity investment, 90% of startups fail in the first 3 years. All value is lost forever. Know-how, code, team dissipate. So 90% of early stage VC funding is totally wasted. That's billions. And you have this stop and start zero-sum model. Almost every startup we see now in Convergence is open source day one, tokenized. And so even if an individual team failed to execute, as long as there's a genuine technical innovation and there's a community around it, it can be picked up, forked. You can have parallel versions being applied to different areas. And as an investor, and we're all investors, your holding, your percentage of tokens on that ledger could be replicated across every child. And so it's evolutionary, it's biological, and it's much less fragile. So sorry, that was much more than you asked about.
Well, that was brilliant. Thank you so much, as always.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I think there's room for one more question, so that should be a very good question. Or two, okay.
I try to. Thanks, Jamie, for your talk. I'm curious on your thoughts on government action and blockchain. I think it's fair to say that many people very prominent in the space, they draw a lot of motivation from sort of the things that we saw in 2008 and the years after. And now they're trying to create something that is more egalitarian and fair. But at the same time, the situation we had in 2008 was largely produced because we had too much market forces at play, so some individuals could use the power securely. So I'm curious, what do you think is a starting point for governments to get in here and ensure that this technology is used not just in the sense for the people that know the code and they can really make a well-informed decision and assessment, but for all of them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and if this was the last question, I would be really happy because it's the topic that I love ranting about. So there's a lot of, because there's been ambiguity from regulators principally. So I think almost every government has recognized, they always say they recognize the value of blockchain as if somehow this is separate from tokenization. I think it was the financial regulator from South Korea that said you cannot have global public utility ledgers without tokens, crypto assets. They're fundamental. I think rightfully so. So last year was just a crazy year. I mean, you couldn't not make money. Sorry, room keeping's just come here. Sorry, I'm busy. So you couldn't not make money, and that's great for some people. Great for the overall market. It looked like a bubble. It was a bubble. Bubbles effectively are, when capital forms around an innovation it can't quantify. They're not inherently bad. Capitalism has bubbles, right? It's just an integral part. But the point is that this was a real Wild West, and it's very opaque markets with a lot of bad practices, some outright fraud, and in many cases people just either totally unaware of or totally ignoring existing securities laws. And you just can't have that, right? So I actually wrote a post about, I guess, 5 days before this major correction happened, saying I really wanted a crypto winter. I wanted a crypto winter because that would drive out pure speculators who were just focused on momentum trading, so just following something going up or going down without any care for the underlying innovation itself. And that's led to lots of assets in the market that have no value at all, and some that are outright fraud. And regulators just can't tolerate that. The role of a regulator is to protect consumers, retail investors. Now, saying that, so everybody kind of looks to the SEC to give guidance on innovations around technology, and the SEC, the US has the most to lose from tokenization. So Europe was the largest market for ICOs globally. It wasn't North America. And tokenization offers a big challenge to both Wall Street and Silicon Valley, primarily Silicon Valley. It's kind of deconstruction of Silicon Valley. Almost all the Silicon Valley's VCs have missed out on investing into tokens. And so, and the US has these restrictive laws around accredited investors. You have to have over $1 million in a bank and certain income to be able to invest in early stage startups. And that's to protect Silicon Valley. Now, in Europe, we don't have that. We don't have those definitions. And sorry, I'm on a conference call. No, I don't want room keeping. Sorry. And so the SEC, what they've been doing is they've been sending out all these subpoenas, and that's largely to collect market data, because they honestly don't understand the market well enough, and they don't understand that they need new regulations or existing regulations enough to cover it. So they've been subpoenaing exchanges, they've been shutting down outright frauds, and they've been saying everything's a security token, but actually that's starting to soften now publicly, because a lot of regulators, this has become very competitive, especially in Europe. So France is leading commendations to the G20 with Germany. They're creating almost a regulatory sandbox for people to do ICO issuances. Malta, Gibraltar, the UK FCA created an ICO task force for proactive engagement in the space. A lot of Europe I was in EU Parliament on Monday speaking to MEPs and people running digital single market initiatives. And they all say, look, we totally recognize this is our opportunity to create a counterbalance to Silicon Valley's and the US's dominance on Web 2, where normally we have to concede startups to the US, or they just get bought and sold to Google. Well, the great thing is with a tokenized protocol, that's open source, it can't be bought and killed by incumbents. So I think European regulators are recognizing this as a huge opportunity, and that's now forcing the SEC to soften its tone and say, okay, well, maybe there could be something like a utility token. And so I think this is a great opportunity. I'm very bullish on both regulators and governments recognizing that this is the opportunity to fix the broken web and equally to deconstruct Silicon Valley.
Thank you so much.
One last question. I think that would be fair.
It's very brief and actually it's more on a terminology thing. Do you think it's really convergence or is it interplay? Or how do you see difference there?
Yeah, so I mean, convergence just sounds better. But you're right. I mean, effectively, there is an interplay between technologies on the one hand, and then I think economic frameworks and digital economies on the other. Actually, the problem at the moment is that there isn't enough interplay. So there isn't enough interoperability, for example. The irony is we're creating these decentralized ledgers, lots of them, and they're all siloed. Which is why there's interesting innovations around Polkadot and stuff like that to create interoperability so we can have these fluid, invisible markets where token crypto assets move around between these various systems. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, all we're seeing is a convergence of technologies. We're not seeing that kind of interoperability yet, but if you read the white paper, we specifically speak to that as a key feature, a key innovation, as one of the key sequences and how this technology is going to scale is there needs to be greater interoperability, greater interplay between these systems.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And I think it's a huge applause for you. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
So before, and congratulations on the birthday, Datorella, and keep up the good work.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yes.
See you.
There you go. Bye. Bye.
See you soon.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, so if you think, as I do, that we should go forward to the program and have Alexander presenting IRA, then we would do that. Otherwise, we would have a short break, but I think it's not a good idea to have a short break. What do you think? Break? Who is in favor of a break? Okay, no one? So, please. Thank you very much. Okay, do you want to use your PC there?
Yeah. Perfect. Yes, can sit up here.
Ограничивая помощь не нужно. Я сам. С одной стороны. С другой стороны. This is streaming, so if you're standing here, then you'll see most likely. Well, it's kind of delayed. I don't know.
It's got like a 5-second delay, maybe.
More than that, there's still Jamie on it. So.
Yeah, or 10-second delay, 15-second delay. I'm not sure.
Yes. No, he's not like. This is the screen one Pearson.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are the I didn't get have a break.
We have it.
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys need anything? Got everything you need?
No. Thank you.
All right. That's good.
Okay, yeah, we can.
Yeah,
I've said we don't have a break, so we won't have a break.
You think so?
Okay, guys,
It
we want to
was
move
like-
on.
Just start talking. Okay.
Okay, can we move on? Okay, Alexander, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi everybody. We are beginning.
Sorry, Alexander, do you need the light or should we put the light on?
I think it's better to turn on.
Yeah. Could you turn the light on? Yeah, that's romantic.
Yeah. It's like the birthday mood here.
Exactly.
Yes, congratulations from my side too. Okay, dear colleagues, let me introduce myself again. I'm Alexander Kapitonov, and I'm a researcher from the academic side. And right now I'm working with a real project what try to apply the blockchain, but not try. It's already done in some cases. I will show later. Applied in the real world, and I'll give you a brief speech about our vision, how we feel it should be, and how it should work with the autonomous systems like robots in our case, because our main goal is economy of robots. And artificial intelligence services can be like an engine inside that network, inside that solution. For us, it's not a big difference between the robot agent, real robot, and artificial intelligence agent, like a service, computing service, or it can be placed on the robot side. Okay, I will start with a short history of our project and a little bit about my research in robotic field, and the next I will show, not show, will tell about use cases, what we are doing with our partners, industrial partners, and after that I will give the word to my colleague Alexander, and he will go a little bit deeper in the details and technical aspects of the work. Okay, Aerolab project and our company based in 2015, and we start work with a platform for a smart city and Industry 4.0 smart factories developers. And we start from the first demonstration, how it's possible to make the deal with autonomous system like a drone, in our case, to make a job. In the first sample, it was a drone filming and drone delivery in the specific GPS coordinates. You're paying, drone flying. That's what we did 3 years ago. Oh, a little bit less, 2.5. Okay, and right now we have a core team. From my side, it's academic research side. We have also Sergey Lonchakov. He's our visionary, the main man who placed the idea how robots should communicate with the people in the future. Evgeny Radchenko, the man who support the blockchain solutions like blockchain projects like Ethereum from the early beginning, from the forums in 2014. He started collaborate with the team and discuss some aspects, and we start one of the first miners in the Ethereum blockchain thanks to Evgeny. And Alexander Krupenkin, he's here. He's main core developer of the smart contracts and site software, what we are using in our project. Because one of the main idea is creating the standard communication between the blockchain and autonomous systems, like robots, like whole factories. And right now we have a framework to standard for standard communication with inside the autonomous systems, inside the robots. It's robot operating system, and it's one of the main framework in our project. Okay, as I said, we start from the supporting Ethereum blockchain, and in 2015 we showed the first demonstration communication between direct communication between robot and human through the blockchain smart contracts with the transmission of the GPS coordinates for the flight. And right now I will tell you about my vision, not only my vision. Just 2 days ago with Jimmy, we got the discussion in the Euro Parliament about modern education. It's a really big problem because right now technologies are growing much more faster than we can educate the students. And it's a really big problem how to deliver the modern knowledges about all aspects of the world. That's why I will talk about educational sites and how teach the future developers of smart cities and smart factories. That's a question to me. And what about our experience? I am working as assistant professor in Mo University in St. Petersburg, Russia, and it's a famous university in programming competition winning. We already got 7 times world winner of ACM ACPC Code Championship, and our students are in demand in the really good companies like Facebook and Google. I don't mean that good in the but the salaries and the experience, yeah, of course.
access to data.
Yeah. They got some problems, but just 7 years ago we got the shift from IT sphere, from programming sphere to the robotics, because like 10 years ago robotics it was something really strange. Nobody think about real application in the in usual life. But right now we can see some service robots and really fully automated houses, and it's our reality. And right now we collect really good team from the different sides, from the mathematical side, from the some basics of technologies side. This is researchers and doctors in the robotics sphere that really good, and they help us to get the right direction. Okay, what about me? I'm working already 9 years with the students, and I'm supporting and hosting the students engineering department, robot engineering department for students, where we assembling and coding robots and solving different tasks. What is really close to the industry. The next slide, I'll show some applications. Also, right now we are working with our European colleagues in Erasmus Plus project, IoT Open. This is project for creation educational disciplines for the IoT, and one of the core technologies. It's our solution for Ethereum will be presented in that course. Everybody welcome. I hope it will be in edX in this autumn. I hope. Okay, what about industrial applications of what we are doing? Yeah. It's a RoboCup competition. Inside that competition, you should solve different complex tasks like computer vision, manipulation, and navigation in the same time. You face with some computational restrictions, and you should provide the specific precise for the movements and controlling the manipulators. It's really not easy. Okay, and we got good results in the last year. We were the winners of the Robotics and World Robot Olympiads, and also we got diplomas in RoboCup competition. Right now we are teaching some, like as usual, university and robotics program, educational program. The basic things like math, neural networks, control theory, that's all. But right now we mentioned that it's not enough. It's not enough right now. Because for creation smart factories and smart cities, you can't exclude the environment and some real communication problems from the process or architecture process. And right now we propose the new disciplines for that. Of course, it's peer-to-peer networks for centralization risks avoidance. As Jimmy said, right now it's one of the big problem when we can't communicate directly with each other, but will be in some cases cheaper and faster. Cryptocurrencies, because it's first money for robots in our vision. It was a possibility to make that transaction and push some process forward, but it was only for the bank system inside. Right now, we have open access for the smart contracts, and we can create own systems with their own rules. Smart contracts. It's the first liability contracts for robots. It's a formal description of the juridic and the business process inside the blockchain. And the robot can apply it and run it, no problem. And of course, cognitive services like an agent inside that network. And a little bit about cases, what we are doing. One of my favorite, it's a carbon footprint reduction. It's not only our idea that right now we should tokenize the externalities from the business processes. For example, when you are flying, you got some carbon pollution, and you can pay for that. Some fund collect the money and send the money, for example, in Africa, where the electricity station works with gasoline. It's becomes solar. It's like a one way, and you reduce your carbon footprint. That's a chain what we can create with the blockchain. Actually, the smart contracts and blockchain allow us to create really long supply chain. That's the main goal what we are following right now. The next case, it's Industry 4.0. Right now we start close testing for the Industry 4.0 maquette. What? Testbed. Okay, yeah. Testbed right now for our use case. It's a big factory from the Fisher Technique with the system Siemens controllers, of course. That's the main point of demonstration that blockchain can work with a really real industrial application, and the Siemens controllers using in the most part of industry. The next case, what we are doing with our colleagues from chemical lab, they're working on the creation some new technologies to make the product. For example, one of the favorite, it's like fluor dioxide material, but it's very sensitive for temperature in production. And when you buy that product, you should be sure that it's done correctly, without any mistakes in the process. And the blockchain here help us to make the monitoring and the information delivery to the customers. And the last one, it's autonomous service providers. It's in our case, we applied for unmanned aerial vehicles, not only for the drones, but right now we are discussing application for the flying taxi in Dubai. And in this case, the artificial intelligence inside can be like an unmanned traffic management system. Unmanned traffic management system for the routing path It's like separate agent inside. The vehicles separate agent, the artificial intelligence service UTM separate system, and they communicate with the money exchange or token exchange. Okay, let me give a word to my colleague Alexander. He will tell us something a little bit more about the technical details. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexander Kropenkin. I'm software developer. For this reason my presentation is a little bit technical, and just start. I want to show how Ethereum infrastructure can be used for smart factories and smart cities. Some words about me. I got master's degree of mechatronics and robotics in Munich University and 6 years worked with robotics and industrial automation. But last 3 years I developed Ethereum platform applications. For my work at AirLab, I develop project architecture and choose AIRA project technology stack. So, what is Ethereum? Ethereum is a platform for blockchain application, but it is not only platform, it is infrastructure too. And here, in my personal opinion, is most important infrastructure points. The first is a peering network of Ethereum client nodes. It is important because Ethereum is still alive until existed 2 people who use it. Of course, it is a blockchain where are stored all data, it is distributed ledger, and finally it is a Turing-complete virtual machine for smart contracts. I prepare a couple of projects who use Ethereum infrastructure directly and provide new service for Ethereum platform. For example, it is a Swarm decentralized storage who provide storage for your files and use Ethereum peering network and use Ethereum token for the payments. And our platform use Ethereum infrastructure too. Just imagine brave new world where all of things connected to the internet and all manufacture is fully automated. How customer connect to smart factory? Because smart factory is lights out. This means without the humans. This means factory have no financial department and no one else, only robots. And how customer can connect with smart factory directly? Of course, Ethereum. Ethereum is a peering network who provide direct connection between human and customers, and smart factory, smart contracts helps us to pack technical data and economical data in one transaction. But Ethereum is not enough. We also need markets of liabilities, preferred decentralized markets, and we also need cyber-physical system integration like industry protocols or nowhere else. We also need it's a more futuristic way where third independent party who can check the production results of smart factory. For this reason, we developed Robotics platform. I want to show some technical cases of how our platform works. The first problem is how customer here and the smart factory here, how customer can check our production history, because production history can make additional value if only if it's separated from producer. Because if information is not separated, producer can change production history anytime. What is here? Here is automation control of cyber physical system. Here is our product is AIRA, Robotics Network Operation System. Here is peering layer, and here is customer who access to production storage. Automation control system publish sensor data to our distribution and throw them with data stored in decentralized storage, like IPFS or Swarm, but hash of this data stored in smart contract of production, and customer or anyone in the world can access to this data and check production history. The next, how customer can access to smart factory directly. The customer use smart contracts to payments or technical data stored in decentralized storage to provide information for smart factory production. And finally, we introduced third party who collect the data from smart factories and check the data because it's very important for stakeholders or shareholders of autonomous production to check that production is really equal to technical specification. And third party can do it. And finally, reject or confirm the smart factory reliability. But you can say why I should use it. It's really work now. No. Half year ago, I was in Barcelona in IoT World Congress, where a big company like Google and Microsoft show his vision of Industry 4. It looked like this, where IT company, where cloud services is partner of smart factory, and customer can access to this service via websites or cloud services. But this scheme is broken. Why? The IT company can change the data from smart factory anytime, and customer cannot trust in production. Customer cannot trust to smart factory and have no direct access. IT company have access to smart factory. I believe that only open industrial world can be built via open source. And I believe that only talented developers can create new open industrial world. For this purpose, we provide a bounty program, and I glad to see you in our contributions. Join us, and thank you for your attention.
Could we have a little bit of light? Thank you very much, Alexander and Alexander. If you don't mind, I have the first question. You mentioned that this system is broken because in the vision of the Googles and Microsofts of this world, there is an IT company who has data access to the smart factory and not the client himself. Do you think, or do you feel, or do you have the impression that the industry is ready for an open source approach here, or do you think it will become quite hard to persuade the industry not to trust the Microsofts, the Googles, the IBMs of this world? That's just a feeling, or what are your thoughts about that?
In my opinion, industry is now prepared for open source. It uses OPC open protocols. It's used many open source solutions. But it's more question about customers, about peoples who want to trust in production, who now is not fully trust in big companies like Facebook, for example.
Yeah, I also got some comments about that. Actually, not a big question. Industry ready for the open source or not? That's mainly it's mainly point of customers at first. But one of the big problem it's changing the financial flow, because when you use the one big company to create such system, the cash only inside company. You can see that capitalization of the Google and Amazon and other IT companies, the biggest right now. But peer-to-peer communication network allow us involve people to that process and distribute the wealth like more comfortable for us.
Okay, I think we have an opinion of Lenz.
Brands are customers. At least it's what I think. People can relate to brand and customer. I'm not sure if people are people without technology can relate to sensor data as a customer. And how would the consumer interface to your smart tech look like? And it's hard to imagine what would I see? Because the thing is bigger than the single part. And because the temperature data, okay, like your family. How would that work?
You mean what is the goal of the collection data, or
what would I as a consumer have to trust them? When I see the data, how would they integrate this?
Okay, what interface you should use to connect, for example, your over sensor?
No, because you sell me a running shoe. You tell me this was made at plastic was involved at 70 centigrades, and this. Do I now know if the running shoe is a good running shoe or a bad running shoe? Sure.
Yeah.
I'm a consumer. How should I?
Okay. I get. I think it's a question of the next step. What we talk about artificial intelligence. When you have the many points of measurements, for example, carbon pollution. Just yesterday we discussed the possibilities of connecting the carbon sensors in the port of Austin, and they want to provide the measurements to government because they want to prove some quality of the process. And if you have like a 2 or 3 sensor in the close point, you can estimate the middle measurement. And if some sensor is failed or the information is incorrect, you can estimate. It will be solved like this, I think so.
One question, when all the industry is ready, do you think that Ethereum is ready?
What does you mean?
Not only in case of scaling, also in just writing smart contracts and having all these native bugs there. So maybe you have a community who is evaluating your code, something like this, so you don't have bugs inside the code, something like this, and also the scaling of Ethereum and the developing of the languages, something like this. So would be a big industry ready, or Ethereum ready to handle like the whole car industry within the blockchain?
The short answer, Ethereum is currently experiment. Well, long answer is The question about scalability of Ethereum is very uh, frequently in any meetup. In my opinion, is a question about scale of cyber physical system. If you want to buy a bottle of water in a shop, you don't need to store this transaction in blockchain. But if you need to buy a car from smart factory, you can wait sometime. You can pay $2 or $5 for this transaction to be sure that your car should be delivered to your house.
Following up the question, but Ethereum is a state machine, it's a virtual machine. So every trigger of a smart contract has to be the blockchain, because in second layer solutions, only some people see what's going on. Like in Lightning Network, only the parties that actually are part of the transaction see the transaction. So if I call a smart contract from the outside, this call needs to be available on the main blockchain. And there needs to be some scaling solution. So
I think you maybe misunderstood his answer. I think what Alexander was referring to, it's very easy.
Yeah.
Alexander's was that you don't even have to do a water bottle transaction over the blockchain.
Yeah, but if you update the state of the smart contract, you have to.
Yeah, but exactly. I think that's what he meant, that you don't have to do it over a smart contract or even related to blockchain.
Yeah, there's suitable cases for the blockchain and there's some others.
I don't really get yet the picture. If you look at this one, there's a trust issue in the middle of an IT company as opposed to your solution. Because in your solution, you still have a trust issue whenever it comes to translate physical world into the blockchain. I mean, either you trust your sensor data, and you trust the guys who applied the sensor, you trust the sensor itself, so it's not broken. So you, at a certain point, you always have a trust issue, and you trust it closer to the factory. I don't think that your approach is really certain.
Yeah, actually, right now we have some standards from the industry side. It's like it's named ethically ethical light design. It was published just the second version in the last year, and one of the main point in that standard, that inside the process should be third party. And what we propose to create an independent third party with a sensor measurement. Actually it can be Baker McKinsey sensor network or KPMG sensor network. They're just going to the factory and equip it with a sensor. But right now it's something like this, but there is work for people right now. They're coming on the factory, estimating the state of the factory, measure some parameters, and do it like twice or one time in the year.
But then you basically have to introduce a trusted third party, which you want to get rid of when you the blockchain and trust.
Of course. In all cases can be people who want to treat, but if we suppose that everybody wants to treat, it's impossible to make something.
I have another answer for this question. For example, it's a question about centralization risk. In this scheme, we have only one company and lots of smart factory, lots of scam customers. And if this scheme is broken, if you use the centralized system, if connection between smart factory, all these smart factories has a fraud, only one smart factory was broken, not all systems.
simply speaking, you don't want an IoT Facebook.
No, we want to make it more transparent.
So there's the wish to have no gatekeeper, yeah? But for me, the question always boils down to who takes responsibility. So is there a brand who takes responsibility for things working or not working, or is it me who have to look whether it's working or not? And for me, the question or the problem, I love open source, but if we are an open source world, I have much more responsibility for everything I do. And the big question for me is whether market participants down there want to have and shoulder this responsibility. I don't know.
Or can. I don't think so. They're just incapable.
Yeah.
I don't know, actually, like 20 or 30 years ago, was in many countries was the problem with the garbage. Right now, it's solved by education and other parts. The people sort the garbage and they feel responsible. I think in the future we will feel responsible for our information.
Yeah. So that would again boil down. Sorry, one second. That would again boil down to what you came up with first, with the education aspect. So the education aspect is much bigger than we all think. It's not just the technology aspect we are talking about. It's education, how to cope with this kind of new technology.
Of course, it's not like a magic. If we provide some solution and it will be work like this, it's not a trick. But right now we can choose the goal and the way how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think the question is on the wrong focus, because if your factory is super smart, yes, you have unique players which have to accept, like, if I'm a 3D player and I have to accept your product, which you are, because you are a different machine, which is in front of being in the process. So you hand me your product and I use it and I craft something out of it. And I need to make sure that you as a machine, that I am as a machine, have to make sure that you as a machine have worked properly. So you don't have to educate the consumer in the end. Only the single player in the whole process must be sure that the product which he receives is safe.
Every single player.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
It's not a good come out. Maybe idea that we can modify the system in the blockchain so that we either high instance
at least a blockchain with blockchain-enabled smart devices, hardware, because they are responsible for delivering the right information to the blockchain.
Yeah. And then I mean that we have to trust the smart contract development, so that this is and this was a correct device. The customer is immediately involved in this. Only I can justify. Otherwise, I have to trust the smart contract developer, or I have to trust some how it is designed. So that is, I think, the main point. That's not a classified software itself. We try to try the hardware security to the incentive to the right thing, but still we don't know what is the correct and what's and for it, if you look at systems of smart system design, we usually try to have black boxes and just have interfaces where you just IT included. Complexity is a lot. I need to look into it, into each box to see whether it's the right temperature, proper light condition, or oxygen environment. I mean, I'm just adding complexity to the entire system instead of saying, well, I want to get, I you decide end of story as to do certain statistics, how do you do it? I don't care. And this is introspection we need to do, and this is actually just exploring some
one point in that opinion. Look at that. For example, if your air condition was made by children in in Africa with slavery, I don't know, the bad things, you don't want such air condition. Maybe it's cheaper, but as conscious man, I think you don't want. And in this case, that's what I mean talking about responsibility, about history of the product and how much carbon pollution it was. Was it made clearly or not? That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Do we have one last question, perhaps? You're the guy with the last question.
I wanted to follow up on
Yeah, sure.
So there is a way around the need to trust sensor input data. So the easy straightforward way is that you use lots of sensors, different parties that all verify each other. Similar like nodes verify each other in Bitcoin. And this makes the system trustworthy because people who don't break the rules get punished economically, but it makes it hugely inefficient. And this is a grayscale. So the other side would be a single party that you fully trust, like or PayPal. And you can do the same thing with your sensors. Either you have a single sensor that you fully trust, or you have multiple sensors that check each other if they report the correct thing. And if one of them is faulty, then the other is punishing economically by not giving Ethereum or some other token for the
yeah.
scale.
Yeah, it makes possible to create different economical gain that will provide some transparency, justify in the market.
I think we have one more, one
Okay.
last.
Either you have to trust one sensor entity or many IoT devices. Why can't you come to a situation where you trust many people? And that's also important. Without the IoT devices. I confirm you and you confirm me this and so on, and in the end, we're also trust. We will trust many people without the
but you should get the digital numbers for estimation. Maybe it can be not a sensor network. It can be a man with a sensor, or like cyber biological system.
So let's pray this won't be an eternal discussion, and we will have some results of this discussion in the near future. So thank you very much, Alexander and Alexander from IRA. Thank you. So we can close this session quite early. So it's earlier than normally, afraid. Yeah, but that does not mean that you cannot drink all beers and eat cold pizza. So we can have networking, chats, and so on and so on. And let me remind you of our next meetup on July 19th for the crypto nerds of you, everybody who is in Bitcoin and altcoins and so on. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Does anyone know how Bayern is playing tonight? No? No soccer fans? Okay, so that was good. Thank you very much and see you next time. Bye.
Okay. Very good.
And if you get dishes with you, it would be a great help. Just Google dishes out and wenn Sie alle Ihre Flaschen.
Do you trust Google?
I trust him. He said it.
Sorry. Yes, yes.
So,
yes.
Ja, freut mich sehr.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, very much. My personal experience quite a long time. So after something,
trying not to say something. It's difficult, right?
We would do that by my personal feeling is that without a Microsoft
which is like, every CIO or CIO
you have to sell that
has the boss to say it.
we will not
This is so, and we have an API that implication.
That's we discussed about here the profile. It will be really cool, like a fan. Yeah, but right now, actually,
Well, actually, now that we take hashes and see that kind of hashes and even more giving super hashes that on the blockchain, and we can use
that's one of the main points what we discussed in your problem, because right now it's a really big problem because when the big companies they calculate cash flow. They haven't any tools.
But my point is with an ideal logic,
That's all.
That's what we want.
Which is
when we try to
it's like they have German and have
but it is a Silicon Valley based company.
Decentralized effects of blockchain.
Yeah, the thing is that the guy who had that idea behind it.
I remembered his name.
Yeah,
It's Rich Vodo.
and then
Rich Vodo.
Which is like a winery area.
and we that's
That's efficiency twice.
Automation of the supply chain. 1 year in between in Southeast Asia. I spent 1 year in Southeast Asia working as well. And then
And they
where I used to live before.
I've never been to Dubai, but I imagine it's very, very good.
I don't know. It's not
yeah,
It's different.
we
It's
discussed
interesting because I got to know people from everywhere, cultures. You travel a lot because unless you like to shopping, everything is very boring. You get to travel a lot.
what use
I've heard of Oman. It's really, really nice to travel.
I've been there, but not extensive. I honestly wanted to get it.
then provided government. And they said
Muslim and I'm really relaxed in terms of
to organize right now that process,
okay, Dubai you can bring, very specific place.
right
In a
now,
hotel or a
Well, for
private
time,
place.
there's things that you
then it's just digitalization.
When I was there, I really liked traveling. So I didn't visit neighboring countries. I was in Oman. As you know, I was way more to discover
just like
what I
5 minutes from July.
So there's a lot of
Yeah, it's very green. Believe it or not, there are some places which is travel journey.
Right. So you're
I haven't been to the myself. I've seen pictures. I saw people that come there and tell the stories. I met a lot of people from Augmented because, you know,
Part of that integration from
well, more than anything, they come travel.
The most interesting part of the presentation was the money flow
Setting up the strategy there and creating companies, the strategy piece is more like
totally get what these guys
how
are
to invest in
presenting.
companies. Even at that time, it was 2008, that was the first time. And then creating companies to actually
There's a lot of people who are not getting any money.
and yeah, so through the government, I got to meet a lot of people. Like I was going to government conferences, and in those conferences, we would meet lots of officials from yeah. And they're very friendly. A bit more relaxed.
Industrial internet.
Still have to know that, but you know, I think
Really,
I don't know, very proud.
A quite good friend of mine has experience. I studied in Saudi Arabia. He says like that's the best thing you can have if you're a Saudi Arabian and you're done for life. They pay for everything for you and your family to go everywhere. And I was like,
I believe
but they kill witches. And he was like, yeah, it's culture that's different.
One thing, actually, Saudi Arabia, I don't know. I see that equal value as well if you are an immigrant. There's no way out. In Saudi Arabia, they have lots of money to things, right? So even if you're a Saudi, it depends what kind of Saudi you are, whether you will have access to these properties. Why you will have. But you know, in Saudi Arabia, there are expats, but not as much as you think. About 85% of the population non-immigrants, right? Saudi Arabia, I don't think the perspective is very different. I would say maybe 30% at the max. And how long have you been living here? Whereabouts in because I have friends in school. Have you tried the Google Cam? It's like, oh my god. You know, I remember, you know, like, we were shopping and stuff. You should try it. I said, yeah, sure, come. And it's back and then she so like that. I know my friends was like, I know too much into this kind of stuff. I was surprised when that. And then you said in France, whereabouts? I've never been to
maybe 10K. I would go out with my every week to the sea and go swimming.
Dramatic landscape.
Yeah, definitely.
Und wir haben drei, wir haben zwei Leute,
And for how long
wir
have
haben
you
einen
been involved?
Inventor,
How long changed that?
oder beziehungsweise einen Vorstand, einer der sagt dann, ja, dann ist das vielleicht nicht so schlecht.
Either this becomes something really big and it can be really interesting, or it will be nothing in a couple of years. I can tell a funny story how I wrote my thesis about something that no one knows about anymore.
I like your reframing capability. That word is specifically about maybe it's too technical, but you know, if it's still the PhD or was it a master or the master thesis?
So I wrote smart contracts. My project is trying to get data on privately or it's very naive. It's tackling a huge problem, and I didn't solve it. I just had a pseudo solution. It led me to lots of other topics that are really interesting. For example, Jamie is they're listed in
My stuff is on that.
and they have a efficient solution. It's basically very, very practical. Just solves basically the problems that I was trying to solve, but I didn't know about that kind of stuff.
Well, in a thesis, master thesis, also you don't have a lot of time, right?
6 months. I really like that I'm allowed to always research. Like, I can always find out about this stuff. Every day I have to learn about it.
And the consultancy business that you're in is mainly technically focused, or do you also have more business?
I mean, we're all, I'd say, 6-7 people here. Me and Björn, here we're the only technical. So, since we're so few, I also have to do business stuff, but that's also what I want to do. So, the technology and strategy part is what is really interesting. That's why I didn't talk to these right because I want to make something that makes sense from a business point of view, that can really be useful.
You should drink some water. Okay, I have to miss his talk. Hi. Luciana.
Jonathan.
So you don't speak Russian?
Just a very little bit. Are you Russian?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Меня зовут Jonathan. Как дела?
Хорошо.
Спасибо.
Where are you from?
Sweden.
Sweden. Great. So you are working together, right?
I'm not working with Ida, I'm working with Icarolo.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And Luciana is working for another company.
Are
you from Munich?
Yes, I'm near Munich. Rosenheim.
Yeah.
I'm from Munich, and I'm working with Jonathan.
You're a developer?
Yes, technical direction. So the last talk was really more interesting.
Yeah.
More details, more graphs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm also technical, so it's also the architectural diagram kind of, the semi-architectural diagram is what is most interesting for us as well. And